Hey lovelies, welcome back to my channel. This is SBE Fashion Institute. So in our previous videos, I taught you how to craft a smaller cap and then a bigger cap. So if you've not seen those videos, kindly do check in the description box. I'll leave a link below and then you can watch those videos of how this small cap was drafted and how the plus size cap too was also crafted. Okay, so in today's video, I'll be teaching you how to use these caps to draft the main body of your corset. So these are the measurements we will need for the pattern drafting. And take notes, all these measurements are in inches. So we will be using the plus size cap for this tutorial. So because it's paper, we are not getting the shape very well. So we will use our masking tape to get the shape right. Okay, so you can just cut the excess. Okay, so yes, now it's sitting very well. Okay, so the next thing we will do is to place the cap on the pattern. Okay, so before you place the cap, note that we'll be using this part of the pattern paper for the yoke and this part for the body of the corset. So you place the cap in such a way that the excess paper here will be enough for the yoke and this side will also be enough for the body. Now we will measure the bust bridge. So the bust bridge, the standard for the bust bridge is 1 inch, and because this paper is on fold. Okay, so before we start the drafting, this paper is on fold. Okay, yeah, so or an open pattern, that's what this is called. And you can do this when the hemline of the corset, the left side of the hemline is different from the right side of it, or even with the yoke, if you have an asymmetric neckline, meaning that left side of the neck is different from the right side. So you need the pattern to be on fold so that after drafting the corset you can open it and then style the hemline and the neckline. So we'll mark the bust bridge. So because the pattern paper is on fold, as I said, the bust bridge, standard for bust bridge is 1 inch. So because it's on fold, we will divide it by 2 and then we'll get half. So the bust bridge measurements, we'll be using 0.5. So after the bust bridge, we can now place the cap after the bust bridge. So we'll use the masking tape to hold it in place. So this is the center front of the cap and this is the side front. So we place it okay. So after placing the center front, the next thing is to place the side fronts. But make sure that your cap is not like this. It's not too curvy like this, and it's also not flat. Just make sure it's positioned well. Okay, so now you can position. You can also take the down part to the pattern paper. Okay, so you see how I'm using my hand to support it? Yes, gradually. And now we have our cap placed very well. So now let's start inputting our measurements. The shoulder to under bust we'll be using for this drafting is 14 inches. The shoulder to under bust measurement. So first we will measure the shoulder to under bust measurements. So you see how the cap is collapsing? Yes, we don't want that, so we'll put something inside to get the structure very well. Okay. So we'll measure the shoulder to under bust. That is 14 inches. So with this 14 inches, the cap is going to be push-up. Okay, you're going to have a push-up bra cap. But if you don't want it, if you don't want that push-up, you can add 0.5 inches. It shouldn't be more than the 0.5. So with mine, I don't want a push-up cap, so I'll make it 14.5 inches. So you pass it here on the fuller parts of the cap. And then you mark 14 inches. Sorry, 14.5 inches. Then you mark a straight line with that 14.5. So now this line becomes our shoulder line. The next thing to do is to mark the shoulder to waist measurements. And the shoulder to waist measurement we'll be using for this is 17.5 inches. So from the shoulder then we'll mark 17.5. We also extend that line. Okay, so this becomes the waistline. Now we can mark our hip line. That is 10 inches away from the waistline. So this is the waist, sorry, the hip line. So the next thing we'll do is to impute our corset length measurements, and we don't want the corset to be too long. The maximum length of your corset should be 5 inches away from the waistline so that you can sit comfortably. So but with this corset I'll be using 4.5 for the corset length. So 4.5 inches from the waistline. So this is our corset length. Okay, so after doing this, we will also mark the underbust line. And we know that the shoulder to waist is 17.5 and the shoulder to underbust is also 14.5. So to get the underbust line, we will subtract the shoulder to underbust from the shoulder to waist. So that's 17.5 minus 14.5. And that's giving us 3 inches. So from the waistline upwards, you can mark 3 inches. Or you can first measure and you see we are getting 3 inches. So the underbust line and we also mark our chest line. So the chest line, you'll be using the length of the cup or the side front of the cup. So this becomes our chest line. So the next thing we are going to do is to impute our body measurements. So first, the bust span, the waist, and the hip. So our corset length will be 4.5, but the reason I marked the hip line first is because usually you're not able to measure around that part you want your corset hemline to be. So you measure the hip line and then connect from the waist to the hip, and now you know the hip circumference for the corset length area. Okay, so this is how you will input your bust measurement, your bust circumference measurement. So pay attention. The first thing we will do, or the next thing we will do, is to measure the cap width from the bust bridge. Okay, so this is what we will do on the highest point of the cap, or you can just use this line. So we are getting 9 inches. So after the 9 inches, you add a standard of 1.5. So that's 10.5. Now you can extend this line upwards. So now we measure the whole thing from the bust bridge to this 1.5. So from the bust bridge all the way to the 1.5. and then we have 10.5. So you can write this 10.5 aside. So we have 10.5. Now our bust circumference is 40 inches. So what we will do is we will divide this bust circumference by 2, or we will divide it into 2. So 40 divided by 2, and it's equal to 20, meaning the back of your corset should be 20 inches and the front should also be 20 inches. So this is how we are going to get the front to be 20 inches. Remember this 10.5 is, look for the 10.5 inches line on your tape measure and place it here on the chest line from the center front. And now you mark the 20 inches, which is the half of your bust circumference. You mark it here, 20 inches. So let's do it again. This 10.5 is from the bust bridge all the way to the side of the cap, plus this 1.5 here. So we have 10.5. And now you carry this 10.5, place it on the chest line from the center front, then you can mark the half of your bust circumference. That's 20 inches. So the next thing we will do is to mark our waist circumference. So the waist circumference, that's 32 inches. But this, because it's corset and we would want to cinch the waist, we are going to subtract the measurement we'll be cinching from the waist. So that's, the maximum should be 2 inches. Unless you want it to be more cinched, which I don't advise. So the maximum should be 2 inches. So our waist circumference is 32 inches. So 32 minus 2 for the cinching, and then we have 30 inches. So now, because this pattern is the front pattern and it's folded into 2, the back will also be folded into 2. So we will divide the waist circumference by 4. So 30 divided by 4 is equal to 7.5. Now let's be sure of that. You can use your calculator. So 30 divided by 4. Yes, we have 7.5. So we'll be using 7.5 for the waist. That's 7.5. So this way 7.5 is. So now the hip circumference we'll be using for this corset is 44 inches. So you also divide the 44 by 4. So the hip 44 divided by 4, and you're getting 11 inches. So we'll mark 11 inches on the hip line. So now we can connect our points from the bust straight to the waist, and from the waist we will connect it to the hip. But with the hip side we will use the curve, because you know our hip is not that straight, and the corset is meant to flatter the hip line, the bust area, and cinch the waist. So if you don't have a lot of flesh around your hip area, I advise you get a hip pad. But make sure that the hip is not too curvy, okay? You don't want to have any false hips. Okay. So now this is what we have for the body of our corset. Let's move straight to drafting the yoke. So the standard measurements for the width and the depth of your front neckline is 3 inches. But because we'll be using mesh for this corset and we don't want any gaping after sewing, you know the mesh is very stretchy. So we'll use 2.5 width and 2.5 depth for the neckline. Then we use our curve to connect these points. So one thing you should know is that nobody is going to teach you how to use these curves. Yes, you just have to, as a good fashion designer, you should know the design or the curve or the line you want to achieve. Okay, so you place your curve in such a way that you achieve what you've already envisioned or what you have at the back of your mind. Okay, so that you achieve that. So we don't want the neckline to be something like this. We all know that necklines are round. Okay, that's the basic necklines. You can have different types of necklines, but we all know that the basic neckline is round. And this is half of the front pattern. So you place your curve that way, the way that will help you achieve that. Okay. So now we will input our shoulder length measurements, and the shoulder length we are using for this course, the shoulder length is 15 inches. Sorry, so 15 inches divided by 2, and then we have 7.5. So the 7.5, we can also mark it, measure it on the chest line. So 7.5, and then we connect these points. Okay, so since our shoulder is not straight and it's a bit slanted, on the side of our shoulder line, which is the armhole area, we will come down by 1 inch. So we will connect this point to the neck width. So now we will measure from this 1 inch downwards to the chest line, and we're having 5.5. So we will divide the 5.5 into 2, and then mark it on this line. So from this point, we will come in by 0.5. So now let's mark our armhole curve. So first we will connect from this point to the 0.5 here. And then from here, we will use the side of our curve. Okay. So we are almost done with the front pattern. So now, we don't want the yoke to be sitting directly on the body of our corset, okay? Because we will be attaching sleeve to this corset, and we don't want to be sewing the underarm part of the sleeve on the bone or on like directly on the corset. So what we will do is to come down by 1 inch. So from this 1 inch, we'll connect to the chest line. Or let's use 0.75 for this instead, because we don't want the side to be too low, the side of our corsets to be too low. So we'll connect this part to the chest line. Okay. So now we are done with the drafting of our of the front. Yes, the drafting of the front. So I did not do any design on the hemline. It's because this is an open pattern, it's placed on fold, and I want a different style for the left and a different for the right. I will wait until I'm done tracing everything out, and then I'll open the pattern and draw the hemline I want. So if you want a simple hemline for your corset, for instance, something like this, so if you want a simple hemline line like this for your corsets, there will be no need to place this pattern on fold. Okay, you can just use the half pattern, and then after you are done, you will transfer or you place the pattern on the folded side of your fabric and then use it to cut. Okay, but in this case, we'll be having an asymmetric hemline, or the design on the left side of our corsets will be different from the right. So for instance, something like this. Okay, so in this case, you realize that the hemline, so this is what I mean by the left side and the right side. So this corset divided by 2, this becomes the left and this becomes the right. So you realize that the hemline of this right side is different from the hemline of the left side. Okay, yes, so that's why you need your pattern to be folded, so that after drafting this whole thing, you can open it and style your hemline. So we've successfully drafted the front of our corset, and we are only halfway there. Next, I'll be uploading the back draft, the yoke, the sleeve, and how I styled this hemline. So make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next steps. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!